Architecture is the only profession that can solve problems spatially. Now, just in case any of you weren't listening, architecture is the only profession that can solve problems spatially. We're the only profession that can deal with what the Europeans call the grand societal challenges. And yet, I have yet to find one single member of the profession who has access to 800 billion euros that have been put forward by Europe to address those grand societal challenges that are happening all around us. At the same time, architecture is at the nexus of what Helga Nowotny, who's the great guru of the creative economies, she says is the future. The future is about digitization, the future is about democratization of knowledge, and the future is about design. So we are at the nexus of these three fields, and we should hold the future of research in our hands. But unfortunately, something has gone really rather wrong, and we are not making good use of our methodologies that we use in practice to help these terrible problems that the world is facing. So I'm going to talk about architecture research practice, which is practice done by practitioners in practice about practice. There are other methodologies like design research. They're subsets of architecture research practice, which is the thing that we're really, really, really trying to promote. And the people I'm really trying to promote architecture research practice with are SME practitioners, that's small practitioners, and in architecture terms, small, well, 30 is a very large practice actually. It's completely different to other fields, but particularly those in the regions who are really still suffering most dreadfully from our recession. What is my qualification for talking about this? Well, I'm going to be coming in as the future director of the Research and Innovation Group here. But I have been fortunate enough to receive over £500,000 funding from the Arts and Humanities Research Council to study the development of research in architecture, because they know that the research culture in architecture is a problem, and they know that architecture has a tremendous amount to offer UK PLC. So my aim here really is to try and get the research agenda between practice and schools aligned so we can get out there and really, really be heard. I think a lot of this hinges on the fact that we've got no consensus about what it is to be a professional, and I go up to the RIBA library and I chunter and think about what it is to be a professional, and Brett has alluded to some of the kind of founding charter things, which are really, really key, that it was supposed to be about innovation when it began. And I really think in some countries of Europe, because I've just put in a big research bid covering the whole of Europe to try and get research practice going globally actually, really our professional skills, they should stand up with or without the protection of title, as they are having to do in some certain countries. Really, our skills, our high-end architect skills, should be fully legible and understandable to people. And I'm afraid, having done all these research projects, I'm firmly of the belief that we have to promote the skills of architects. Architecture is something that everybody can do. We in schools of architecture are teaching architects the high-end methodologies of architects. And I really, really believe that we have to get behind that. And if the RIBA isn't going to get behind it, who will? So, in terms of a bit more context, in terms of the creative economy in Britain is set to overtake the financial services as the biggest generator of GDP. So, why within all of that are architects actually losing their market share when the creative economy is recognised as such a powerful, powerful engine? Why within this? At the same time, this is causing a real problem, because I really believe in what Michael Sorkin says, that everyone has a right to good architecture. The problem is that people are not getting good architecture because architects are not being respected, they're not being heard, and they're not being paid. We've heard that the average pay of an architect has just gone up to lifetime pay, 40,000 a year, less than a train driver. Well, it just speaks for itself, and the poor conditions of working in practice are contributing to our lack of diversity and all sorts of other things. So really, it's not a very great place. So there's everything to gain by joining up research, practice and education to really make ourselves understood. And I firmly believe in the prediction made by the Building Futures crew who did the Future for Architects, who said that the future for SME practice, the vast majority of practitioners in the UK, is in high-end, high-skilled specialist consultancy. That is the way to get across that we have something above and beyond the internet to offer the world to make things different. Because maybe the old validation criteria, which were very sort of thin and generalist for being an architect, that diversity, really, a lot of people have got those skills now. We have to be something thoroughly different. So we've got a huge opportunity now to align research and practice. But we have to agree an agenda for the profession, which is what I really think we need to be doing now. We must allow for flexibility, and including in that, I think we need flexibility of cost and ways to be educated. But flexibility of an opportunity to be choosing the way you study and the things you study and the specialisms that you study, to allow students to do languages, to allow students to do business studies, to allow students to do entrepreneurialism. We have to be opening up schools to allow these kinds of things. And we really, really need to focus on the skills of what the architecture skills actually are. Because I've encountered many people coming out of architecture degrees at the end of the third year really feeling that they couldn't describe what they could do at all. So for me, I want students. I feel dishonest and I feel I'm not helping the world unless the students that I teach can get a good job, a rewarding job and a fulfilling job that takes them into the future in a sort of promising way. I want students to be able to say what they can do in layman's terms. I want them to be critical and to understand different points of view so that they can address different audiences and get the message across. So they need to be excellent communicators. I want them to be able to provide evidence of the value of their particular skill set, and that includes quantitative value. That includes the things that policy understands, because we have to speak in the language of policy. I did a session at the Guerrilla Tactics upstairs. I asked the room full of small practitioners who were in there, what evidence do you have that you've done any good? And the only thing that they could come up with was client recommendation letters. So I said, would that carry any sort of clout with policy? No, they all agreed. We have to be able to be developing an evidence base for essentially why we are worth it. We have to enable practices to access alternative funding. The days of the council architecture practices, which allowed people to do more ethical kinds of practice, are gone. So research funding is one way for practices to access money to do things that are not about commercial values, that are not just about making money. And there's a lot of it there. As I said before, there's 800 billion euros. It's just madness not to be taking that offer up. So we need to offer practices from the students that come through the school. They need to offer practices, new skills and new specialisations. And I've been in very good schools where the practitioners come back and say, yes, we learnt from this year one student this whole new thing that we never knew about, and we're taking that forward. And that is what should be happening. So that the things that are happening in schools and that are happening in practice all align together to reinforce each other on the same message. Ultimately, we really need to expand our market share and to make sure that we can impact on the environment, that we use our 7 years of training to really make our built environment a better place. And I didn't put up a PowerPoint, but I always show examples of, the hideous architecture that is happening in most of Britain as we speak now. And perhaps only 10% of it is happening with the volition of architects. So, how can we do this? We need to teach students to be problem solvers. We need them to be communicators. We need them to be able to generate evidence, and we need in a rigorous way. We also need them to be clever and understand the nuances of presenting that information in a clever way. And this includes design and representation and all the things that we hold so dearly. And this can only be done by articulating practice as research. So I think we need a curriculum in our schools that's developed and consolidated with practice, because as I've gone round working with practices in my research, there's just so little agreement on actually what education is for. And we keep seeing things in the AJ or whatever that say schools are not fit for purpose and so on. This must not and cannot happen. So I believe schools need to teach high-end professional specialisms to help and reinforce the practice specialisms, and to get out there and to get ourselves heard. So please, 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 whatever you vote or wherever we go in this thing, please set the schools free to develop these specialisms, to develop excellence, to help them align with their own universities, because a lot of schools at the moment are now at odds with their universities, which have a very, very research-led agenda, and are having a battle with their own universities to be heard themselves. So we really, really need to join that. So I was asked to go and talk to the Architect Student Network. Some of the folk are here at Manchester a couple of weeks ago, and Vinesh asked me, so Flora, should we be producing students oven ready for practice? My response was really, that depends very much on what practice. And if practice going forward is research-led, it is excellent, it is rigorous, it is able to demonstrate its value, using all the fantastic creative potential and nimbleness that architects traditionally have. If that's the kind of practice, then yes, I think architecture schools can and must produce students oven ready for practice. But we've got quite a lot of work to do before that's actually going to happen.